Hello, I'm Sean Lim, and welcome to After 10. Small towns, global companies. What does it mean to be a global leader right in your own hometown? On today's After 10, we speak with a leading academic who wants to tell Korea's youth that going local can be going global. Stay with us. Professor Mo, thank you so much for joining us tonight on After 10.
Okay, thank you for having me here.
Well, Professor, regional development has been a long-standing, controversial topic here in Korea, but your new book takes a different take on it. You really want to try to inspire growth in the regions and provinces organically and have major companies come out of these locales. What inspired you to take a really close academic look at this topic?
My interest in this topic is based on my personal experience. I lived in Austin, Texas for 5 years in the mid-1990s. So before I went to Austin, I only lived in big cities. So I was embracing myself for life in a small town. But when I arrived in Austin, I discovered that Austin had many world-famous companies like Dell Computer and Whole Foods Market, and that came as a big surprise to me. Another really interesting thing about Austin is that people in Austin really love their cities. They literally think that they live in a paradise, and people talk about Austin lifestyle all the time. You know, lakes, hills, and creeks, and Tex-Mex, and Blue Bonnet, and most importantly, live music. So these two combinations, big companies in small towns and attractive lifestyle of small towns, became the basis of my story in this book.
So you contrast that to life here in Korea, where people feel like they have to be in Seoul to really benefit from the best jobs, the best lifestyles, and all of the other attractive amenities that you mentioned about life in Austin. How would you describe the Korean situation?
Neither is present. That is, can't really find any small cities in Korea that have produced global companies, big companies, that are important companies. And I will also say that people in small cities are not generally very proud of their lifestyle, or they don't even think about this issue that the lifestyle is important to their lives. So, and my view is that they just follow the lifestyles that other people follow, which is so that there is without thinking too much about this issue, and people just follow Seoul lifestyle. I think that's the way I would describe the situation in Korea.
Tell us more about some of the other cities that you visited that formed the basis of this book, and some of the other companies that really sparked your interest.
There are many cities. I mean, this situation in Korea really does not exist elsewhere. I mean, if you look at the countries across the world, and countries like the United States, Germany, or Switzerland have many small cities that are very successful with great companies. So for them, that having great companies in small cities is nothing really new.
So let's talk about Palo Alto. It was just a very small town with a very small population.
That's the point, that everyone just assumed that Silicon Valley always existed. But it began only in the 1950s. And before that, and it was like a small town in Korea, then most people who graduated from Stanford University went to the East Coast for jobs. And most big computer companies like IBM and DEC were in New York. And so there are people in Palo Alto, especially Stanford professors, felt that this is unusual. And they wanted to keep their students in the local economy and actually encouraged their students to start companies. The most famous of them is the Hewlett-Packard. So Hewlett-Packard got started in the 1930s with the encouragement of a very famous Stanford professor, Thurman. Fred Thurman was at the time the dean of engineering school. And he is now considered the father of Silicon Valley. And Hewlett-Packard is not the only company. He also helped found many other companies who later became the pioneers in Silicon Valley. And he also responsible for building the Stanford Research Park, which was actually a house many famous high-tech companies. And that Stanford Research Park spread to other regions in the Bay Area. Now we call that area Silicon Valley. So Silicon Valley started in Stanford Research Park, which was founded by Dean Thurman.
So if it wasn't for the vision of that dean and other people like him to keep all the talent in the Silicon Valley, they would have all gone to New York. Silicon Valley would never really have been able to grow. That region wouldn't have been able to grow its economy. So your point is to keep people local.
That's right. There were, at the time, there were other cities who could have created Silicon Valley. Maybe there might have been better places like Berkeley, at University of California, Berkeley, University of Washington, Seattle, or Ithaca, New York, Cornell University. And so there were many schools that produced great engineers, but we know after the fact that Palo Alto turned out to be the one that produced the real Silicon Valley. So how do you explain this? We can only turn to entrepreneurs and visionary leaders for put all these things together. And so the point is that all these great towns and great companies, small towns, didn't, one created naturally. It was the result of individual effort and individual hard work.
In your book, you mentioned a term E-log, which is 4 success factors of major companies that grow in a small market. What does it take for a company to have this E-log?
Actually, E-logs, the concept that should be applied to cities, not companies. I was looking for common factors among a successful small cities, meaning the small cities that have produced great companies. So the successful small cities had 4 ingredients, which is entrepreneurship, lifestyle, openness, and globalization. Now, throughout the book, I emphasize the importance of lifestyle. If you think about the importance of lifestyle, it's kind of obvious, right? You want your young people to stay in their hometown, and they have to find it attractive, one or another. Staying in your hometown, and so unless you have an attractive lifestyle, it'll be very hard to keep your talent. But also, a lifestyle can produce business models. And if you think about Starbucks, where Starbucks got the idea about opening express cafes, the founder of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, and remember worked for a coffee shop in Seattle. And at the time, in the early 90s, Seattle already had many famous cafes and coffee shops. So without Seattle's coffee or cafe culture, Howard Schultz would not have found the business model. There are many other examples that many people in Korea are worried about arrival of IKEA, for example. How a small town in southern Sweden, like Älmhult, was able to produce now world famous furniture company like IKEA. But the original idea was very simple, that Alamut is a very poor agricultural area. So people there could not afford expensive furniture. And then people had to drive out and buy furniture. So the founder of IKEA, Kamprad, started producing furniture that's appropriate, right for poor farmers. That is simple, inexpensive, and something they can carry in their cars to home, pick up and carry this flat pack furniture. There are many other examples like this that local conditions, unique local conditions, produce business models that turned out to be very successful global business models. So every company I studied here, I would say examples of companies that took advantage of unique local lifestyles.
We have a little bit of that approach here in Korea where the local economy will find its assets and then try to make a business out of it, namely agricultural like the Posong green tea, or we have apples from Andong and even mud in Poryong to make a mud festival. So we do see some offshoots of this kind of philosophy, but what do you think is not grabbing a hold in order to create a real global enterprise? That
we call local brands, the specialty brands that every local government is trying to promote. And I think that in itself is a very a desirable the endeavor, and we should encourage them. But they are local specialties, and they have to take one more step and turn them into a global business model, so that actually can. But these are always very small operations, and produce companies that can not only attract, keep local talent, but attract talent from elsewhere. So that's the step that I'm interested in. Then how these local brands became global companies.
Right. Let's talk about what the Korean government has tried to do in terms of fostering regional development through various measures like tax incentives or other types of government-led initiatives. Why do you think your model is better?
The current government policy is an example of redistribution. You're taking existing assets and then give them to small cities. Now, given the conditions of provincial cities in Korea, local government, they do need a lot of help, financial help from the central government. But ultimately, what they need is the support from the central government that can actually help them create real jobs and produce real companies. Now, central government wouldn't know, what kind of industries and what kind of companies will be good for local economies. It's only the local leaders and local entrepreneurs who know that. So ideally, the local governments have their master plan, right, based on their local competitive advantage, and think about how central government can help them. That's based on their master plan, but I don't see such master plans coming from the local governments. Maybe I'm wrong, but people's perception is that local governments just demand more budget and more resources without developing a really viable plan for independent local economy.
So how do you get people in those regions to be able to shift some of their mindset and also the existing status quo?
The first thing, is that there are ways to change that, and there are all the successful small towns and that I visited, one successful in the beginning. So I guess that change of attitude is most important. Second is that they have to really think about the lifestyle, right? That they talk a lot about infrastructure, like good schools or more roads and more cultural amenities. All those things are fundamentals. I think we need strong fundamentals to grow the local economy, but at a deeper level, right? And you need people, right, to even make plans and develop all these plans and actually carry them out. And without attractive lifestyle, I don't think people you need to plan all these, I don't think will stay in your local, cities.
So people want to have to live there, truly want to live.
That's right,
and
proud,
spend
yes.
their lives
That's
in
right.
this town.
Mm-hmm.
So here in Korea, do you think Busan has some hope and some advantages? It's the second largest city here in Korea, and we've seen massive development recently, and there's the big fancy film festival there every year. Mm-hmm. Does the lifestyle amenities in Busan also then translate to more companies being developed there, more talent staying in the southern port city?
Busan is one of the cities that's very close to developing their own lifestyle, but they're not quite there yet. I mean, the fact of the matter is still that young people in Busan come to Seoul, continue to come to Seoul. So I don't know what it takes, but maybe it'll take great artists or novelists or poets in Busan to articulate what Busan lifestyle means. There is enough there, as you said, that we can build on to articulate Busan lifestyle. I think they are very close. They are very close.
So where are some of the hopeful signs that you're seeing here in Korea?
In Gangneung, I don't know how many people are aware, it's really becoming the coffee capital of Korea, and over 200 coffee roasting companies and cafes, and actually, one of the pioneers in Gangneung coffee industry, Terrosa, opened their first Seoul store in Gwanghwamun, probably the largest coffee store, cafe in Seoul. And so, these are hopeful signs. And Jeju attracts a lot of new immigrants. We say immigrants. They say about 2,000 new Jeju citizens every month.
So Koreans moving from the mainland
Seoul to Jeju.
Oh, and Seoul in particular.
Yeah, and so there are people. You can find enough people who are not happy with Seoul lifestyle, want to leave Seoul for something different. But even in Jeju, if you ask them what they're looking for in Jeju, they will typically say that they're looking for something they are missing in Seoul, like
Nature?
easygoing, nature, healthy. They want to rediscover life in the evenings, but they haven't really reached a stage where they start thinking about that lifestyle that's unique to Jeju.
And are these mainly retirees?
Some young people, some retirees. Personally, I think that they are dreaming California, that Daum Communication and Nexon moved their operations there, and they want to create the Korean Silicon Valley. And many artists go there to create artist colonies. And some of the farms, the commercial farms they're building, Osolog or coffee farms, remind me of Napa Valley, that they grow something and then show to customers, and actually they make billions out of those local farms. So here and there, I see signs of a California lifestyle, but I don't know whether people in Jeju will agree with my assessment.
What do you want to tell the readers of this book who are of the next generation?
The book introduced a lot of people, that pioneers, and I want to tell young people that one person can make a difference in their community. I think we can start doing that by making our cities more interesting and different. Now we want our young people to be different. But it's very hard for young people to be different individually. But if we make intermediate organizations like cities more diverse, I think that'll make Korea a more interesting place because you can go and choose cities you like. So we all talk about now building a creative economy in Korea. To me, making Korean cities more diverse, I think is the best way toward building a creative economy for the country as a whole. And instead of turning an entire country into a creative economy, we may be better off supporting many small cities that are creative districts or innovation districts at the local level.
And make it natural.
That's right. I think it'll be easier. And we tend to think of industrial policy or innovation policy as a national issue. But actually, if you think lifestyle and people are important to the success of creative economy, it should be a local issue. Building a local innovation district that can bring engineers and venture capitalists together and where they can live together very happy.
So for our international viewers, when can they read this book in English?
I wrote this book for primarily for the Korean audience. But if you think about this, my argument is simple, right? That small cities can produce great companies and unique lifestyles leads to great companies. For Americans, I think it's so obvious that they will wonder why I ask such an obvious question, because there are many small cities in the United States with great companies. So I'm not too anxious to introduce this book to the American reader because I think they already succeeded. But China, I think, will be my next stop. China is a big country, but they have strong local identity. And despite that, much of economic development is concentrated along the coast and big cities on the coast, and they are really interested in developing the interior and cities, small cities, and they may find this kind of argument very interesting for their own regional development.
Well, Professor Mo, you certainly gave us a lot to think about. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
And that does it for us tonight on After 10. Join us again next time. We'll see you soon.
We will continue to do our best to improve our show based on the perspective of our viewers. Always feel free to leave us any comments, great ideas, or suggestions you wish to share with us.